The 2026 Winter Olympics have wrapped, but a lot of Americans, I think, still have Olympic fever. There were so many amazing performances that came out of the quadrennial extravaganza held in Milan and Cortina. So many extraordinary athletes shining on the world stage. Our featured guest on this episode of the Heisman Trophy podcast was also in Milan, providing superb commentary and analysis for NBC's coverage of speed skating. And it was incredibly appropriate because 20 years earlier, he won his own gold medal in speed skating, just one Italian region over in the Piedmont at the 2006 Olympiad in Turin. He also added a silver to go with the bronze. He won at the 2002 Olympics in Salt Lake. And in short, he is a speed skating and Olympic legend, I would say. He's also the first winner of the Heisman Humanitarian Award, which is an honor the Heisman Trust gives out to recognize sports figures who use their platforms to help those who are less fortunate. And this guest was a trailblazer in that regard. I could keep going on because he's done so much, but we have to save some things for the podcast. So welcome, Joey Cheek, to the Heisman Trophy podcast.
Chris, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it. This was a heck of a games, wasn't it?
Oh, man, I think it was one of the best in a while, at least as far as, you know, it really made an imprint on a lot of people, I think.
Absolutely. I know NBC was certainly happy. I was thrilled as a former athlete and now fan watching it. Obviously, my heart belongs to speed skating, and we had an absolute rock star in Jordan Stolz who took home 2 golds and a silver. So it's fun to be on the call. I've been on the call for speed skating when we had a much darker time. So this was nice.
Yeah. He's still really young. What makes him so good at such an early age?
Yeah, he's 21. He's extraordinary. And the thing that makes him extraordinary is he's extraordinary in like multiple ways. So it sounds like a cop-out. But the man won the 500 meters, the shortest race in speed skating. That's the race I won. He also has typically the best last lap of the 1500. Now, in this 1500, he did get beaten. He was silver. But no one who races the 500, even if you make it to the 1500, no one has the best last lap and they win the 1500. So that combination of pure speed and kick, it's people shouldn't be wired that way. You tend to be one or the other. And he's extraordinary that way. And then mentally as well, he's probably the toughest guy in the field. And, you know, he's just all business. He just cares about nothing other than winning at speed skating.
Yeah. That's actually one of the areas that I wanted to ask you about later, like what separates elite athletes from other elite athletes, especially at the Olympic level, how you handle the pressure and all that kind of stuff. I remember Eric Heiden. That was my day with speed skating. I remember after that happened, I was like, I want to go be a speed skater. But I was in Orlando, Florida, and there wasn't many opportunities for speed skating. You were in Greensboro, North Carolina, and you fell in love with the sport. Yeah, how did that happen?
So I grew up racing on inline speed skates. So you know, remember the 90s, right? Like everybody was on rollerblades, and I was the U16 national champion for speed skating on wheels. And look, in the 90s, Rollerblade, the company, was selling 10 million pairs a year. So like tens of millions of kids skating. And then even if only 1% of them wanted to race, you're still talking about hundreds of thousands of kids across the country racing. And so that was a huge talent pool. And I was one of the top inline guys. So when I was 14, I was watching the 94 Olympics. And I saw Dan Jansen win his gold medal for the U.S. in speed skating. And I saw a Norwegian guy named Johan Olaf Koss win 3 gold medals. And I was just blown away. I told, you know, my mom sort of famously, we're in North Carolina in my mom's living room in February. And I was like, I want to do that. And she says, well, it ain't going to happen here in Greensboro. So I left home the next year, turned 15, started moving Midwest and Canada for a bit and Utah for a bunch of years, but you just move where it was cold. Inlines allowed a bunch of kids from Florida and North Carolina and Texas and California who otherwise would never have been speed skaters to at least have, you know, access to the sport.
What were the physical attributes that you just had right off the bat that made you a natural candidate to be a speed skater?
I think the 2 things that I realize now were natural, although at the time, I don't know that people say that, but I was really good right away. So I won national age group titles my first year on wheels. So I clearly was good enough at picking it up. But what I've realized now, and especially having my own kid now and seeing like the traits he picks up or doesn't pick up, I've always had, they just call me a mountain goat. Like I never fall. So, we're like on a side of a mountain and the rocks slide out from under you, and I
Yeah.
sort of a natural feel on my feet.
Good
And the
balance. Yeah.
second, yeah, good balance. And then there are two other physical attributes that I know because we measured them, but I had really good type 1 sprint fibers. And it wasn't until like we started getting genetic testing that we start to see like, oh, that's, you know, it's a very small percentage of European descended folks have this
Hmm.
sprint gene. So
Hmm.
I was at a 37-inch vertical when I
Yeah.
was in high
Wow.
school, and a VO2 max that was like quite high. So there was a number of things that all aligned.
Yeah.
But in terms of like challenges, because of course it always seems like, oh, of course you won medals, you had all these things. I was probably the weakest physical guy on the team, like in terms of just pure weight. So when
Hmm.
you look at the guys in the weight room, like I was never strongest. I was really high strength to weight, but never that strong. And I created way more lactic acid than any of my competitors or any of my other teammates. And we tracked lactic acid every day. So, like I was skating the 1500, but I would explode spectacularly at the end of the race. And it limited my distances.
Yeah. You talked about the muscle fibers. Is that you're talking about mostly like in the hamstring area? Was that where you had where most of the benefit
Yeah, so
was?
it's all over. Like whatever your muscle fiber, there's a strong genetic component to it. There's sort of the sprint fibers, and then
Hmm.
there's fibers that can be trained to be sprint or endurance, and then endurance
Hmm.
fibers. At least that was the science when I was skating. I'm sure it's evolved.
It's like
Um,
the fast twitch thing,
Fast
right?
twitch,
That's
slow
yeah, yeah,
twitch. Yep.
yeah.
And there's a set of slow twitch that you can train up for fast,
Mm.
and there's a set of slow twitch that will never train up. They just stay slow twitch. And I'm very high on the fast twitch, and there are markers that they can track now, and you can see that. My wife, who is an Olympian as well, she's in kayak. She also has this very rare sort of European sprint gene as well. So
Wow.
our kid, it's a recessive gene, so he was guaranteed to have it. So we're like,
Wow.
we may have over-indexed on speed. Like we see this kid tearing around, we're like, uh oh, we've
Oh my
we've
gosh.
bred him too strong. We can't overpower him.
You got his website already from birth, you know.
He's probably going to be like a cellist or a poet or something. He's
Oh,
like, I don't want to be I don't
that's
want to be an
amazing.
athlete.
Why not all of it? Why not do everything?
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, I have not joked with him this way because I don't want to put like a weird complex in his head. But
Yeah.
I've been like, look, kid, I gave you the best genetics I possibly could. It's up to you now.
Yeah.
You got to figure it out.
Yeah. You came from the Piedmont Triad, which I think is funny because you later won gold in Piedmont. Um, but I wanted to ask you one more thing about your athletic foundation, which is did you play any other sports? Did you try track and field? Like, did you see how fast you were? Did you ever time yourself?
So no, I never did because as soon as I put skates on my feet at about 9 years old, it felt like the thing I was made to do. However, I grew up loving Michael Johnson. So
Hmm.
Michael Johnson, famous 200, 400-meter gold medalist. Like my athletic hero was a track and field guy. And my races, the 500 that I won is 38 seconds, right? So we're kind of in the middle, like a short 400-meter, but under that range.
Hmm.
And I decided I would, when I finished my sport, graduated school, I always wanted to run track and field just for fun. And so I started doing masters track and like old man track, right? Like I never ran in high school, never ran in college. I ran old man track and I started training with the New York Athletic Club, a couple of folks from there, which is a very funny story because they totally tricked me and like they ran me through the ringer and it's pretty funny. But I did when I was in masters, I ran a sub 50 400
Oh, that's
as a
great.
like 38, like a 38-year-old.
Yeah, that's really good.
And so I was good enough that I was like, okay, had I been training for this, I would have been probably okay as a track and field person. But
Uh,
I have, I think they are the best athletes in the world. So I don't put myself,
hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't
Well,
compare myself to what
okay.
those men and women do.
Yeah. So, when it comes to speed skating, when it comes to being ready to perform in that gold medal race, is it similar to track and field in the sense that you are trying to peak at the right moment as far
Yeah.
as exertion and all that?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of similarities, I think, probably mentally and physiologically. I will say, speed skating is an incredibly technical sport. Um, I think it's probably one of the most technical sports in which having a great, I don't know, mastery of how to push against the skate makes an enormous difference in your performance. And the reason I know that is because I've seen people, the same person who can swing, quite a bit depending on if technically they're on or not. I almost liken it. It's a little bit like golf. golf is such a technical sport, and someone who
Hmm.
knows how to put their body weight behind a swing will just absolutely crush the thing straight and far, regardless of their fitness. There are elements of that in speed skating. So if sports are spectrum and something that's purely technical is one on one end and purely physiological is on the other, speed skating's in the middle, sort of maybe like swimming or something like that. So, at this point, even now, long since my career has ended, you could put great athletes on ice skates and it takes them years and they still will never get the feel. Like you'll always see their body language. It never looks natural. And so, that technical mastery really matters, and having everything come together on the day of a big competition, mentally, physiologically with your peak, and then technically so that you're on, it's that's the trick, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Do you break down the race in its separate components and work on those components and try to master those?
Well, for me, because I was a sprinter, it was learning how to not try too hard. And then physiological, or from a technical perspective, there were physiological keys and things that I knew that worked for me. And when I did those things, I won. And when I didn't do those things, I wouldn't win. And so for me, the trick of multiple years, really the last 4 years of my career, were drilling those same technical cues over and over and over again. So when the gun went off, I just automatically did them. And you don't get in the situation where you panic or you try too hard. It was all just the same things. The interesting piece I realized, this is sort of a cornerstone of my belief on sort of performance for people, human performance, I guess, is I actually think almost everyone knows what they do well and don't do well already. If you've done any sport for any length of time, you actually know what you aren't doing well. And so the trick is finding what are the things that fix the things you don't do well and then drilling those. And most people don't have the discipline to do it. It's wild. People know, you're like, hey, why didn't you skate well in that race? Why didn't you do whatever? They usually will know, I did this or I whatever did that. And you go, well, why'd you do that? And they're like, I don't know. And so finding that cue to fix that and then religiously drilling it. Like that was all I thought about. I had a note card with 3 things that I looked at every day. That's all I worked on for 4 years straight.
Wow. Wow. So for you, was your strength your start? Was it just a matter? Was it your ability to overcome a slow start? Was it your ability to turn the corner?
I was by far the best. I'll tell you this. This is the nicest compliment I ever got about my speed skating. One of my old teammates, who was a phenomenal junior and just barely missed an Olympic team, said he had never seen anybody who used everything he had the way that I did. And that there were people who were better athletes. There were people who were better technicians, not many, a few. There were people who worked harder. There were people who had a better mental game, maybe. But he said no one had maximized all 4 of those things the way that I did. And I think that is one, it was just like an incredibly kind, like it made me feel incredible. But 2, it keeps you pretty humble, because as soon as I start thinking I'm like, like strutting around, the universe has a way of like knocking me back down again. And so like regularly I was not the best at elements, but when I put them all together, then I could have been the best. I was the best for that moment in time. But it was, it's a lifetime of building it for that one moment.
Yeah, that actually is a really great and effective compliment, like you said, because it doesn't really make you think, "Oh, I'm good at any one thing." It's almost backhanded in a way, right?
A tiny bit, yeah. I when I first heard it, I was a little offended, but it worked, right? Like it wouldn't have been as kind if it hadn't all come together. But when you look at it, we measure everything. So I mean, it's not like there's spot the lie, the kids say, right? Like it's true. If you like lay us out on paper, all of the different athletes, there were people who are better at all kinds of things. But that's not what matters. What matters is that you're able to put it together and put it together on the day that it counts. And I always was able to put it together on the day that counts.
Mm-hmm. So when you're getting ready to go to the Olympics, for you going to Turin in 06, at what point, if it exists, is there a point in the process after qualifying and all that, preparing, that you start to get nervous, or you did start to get nervous?
I was chronically nervous. I was famous for being super nervous before my races. Oddly, I only remember this because I had I had the conversation with a guy named Casey Fitzrandolph, who's a U.S. Olympic gold medalist in speed skating. The day of the men's 500, we were at breakfast together, And I was talking with him, and I was like, "Yeah, it's weird. Like Fitz, I'm not nervous at all." I'm like, "I don't know if that's good or not." And he says, "Well, we'll see in a couple hours." And that one day, it was like everything was locked, and I was not nervous. But almost all of my races, I was always kind of nervous. So that was a bit of why some of that strategy with like, what are the things you're focusing on? It's almost Zen-like in the way you train, like repetition. This one I'm working on. This one I'm working on. This one. It almost serves as armor for nerves.
Mm-hmm.
But the right amount of nerves is great because you perform better. And I was always better the day that it mattered. So I think that adrenaline rush, it was a management thing. Like manage it so you don't spaz out,
Mm-hmm.
but use that wave to get more speed, more power.
Yeah. Describe to me the feeling it was to get out there, get ready for the
Uh,
race. The world's watching you. People back home are watching you. You've got the crowd there. You've got the camera in your face. All that kind of stuff.
I I I loved it. I'd love to hear what the football players say for guys who go to like the like guys who go to the big show, right? Super Bowl or whatever. But it was amazing. Speed skating, obviously, like we're big in Europe, and we would get we'd be seen in Europe, but speed skating in the U.S. It's not like we're only a sport every 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I just thought for that moment, especially in the 30 seconds when the starter's about to give the gun, it feels like the entire world just stops, and that was the purest moment. And it's honestly, that is a dragon that I'm still chasing to this day and probably will my entire life. Like the combination of being the best you've ever been at something, being the best at your thing in the world on the day that the whole world is watching, it's incredible.
Because
So it's a heck of a rush.
that's different than being the world's best cellist, right? Because there's
I
no event.
imagine so.
There's no event. Well, I mean, there's no event that crowns you the world's best cellist, right? So this is
Yeah.
what I mean. It's you can be considered as such, but this is
Yep.
something where you had, in order to prove yourself, you had to do it in this incredibly unique circumstance. And some people really, they kind of wilt for whatever reason, for understandable reasons, under the pressure, or it's just not their day. We saw that a few times in the Olympics, like in the figure skating, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, man, this is another one. I'd love to have heard other people's responses on this. Um, the real world is super mushy, and I didn't know that because to me the real world was skating until it wasn't, and so I had most of my life and most of my adult life was like, here's the goal, here's the exact distance, here it's 100 meters and then a 400-meter oval, and we're going to do it on this day in February, on this hour in February. Like everything. You
Mm-hmm.
generally know the times people are going to skate. You don't know exactly, but we know within a tenth or two what the likely win is going to be. All of it is laid out, and all right, 4 years from now this is the goal, 3 years from now, 2 years from now, 1 year from now, 12 13, 11 months, and it's so structured, and you build out a training program, and you have done it for years, and then you get into the real world, and like what is winning now? Like there's no
Yeah.
winning, like there's no, you can lose but there's not winning. And
Yeah.
it was an awful shock, and I think that's why so many athletes struggle so much when they leave. Is one, the structure of their life is now gone, and you feel like a horse that's had blinders on, and now you don't know where to look.
Mm-hmm.
And two, what do you even, like, all right, well, all right, what do I do? What am I doing this for? Like, okay, well, let's say I absolutely kill it on this Excel spreadsheet. Who
Yeah.
cares?
Yeah. Right.
It's a hard transition, man. Real
Yeah.
world is a tough transition.
You had some ideas, though. You were not a guy who, once you had accomplished the amazing feat of winning the gold, you were not one of these guys who was going to coast or go on a victory lap. You had some thoughts about what you could do with that moment, and tell us what it was that gave you the idea to
Yeah.
first give away your prize, and then we'll talk more after that what you did next.
Yeah, well, the reality is that I won my first medal after a really hard year. So, the 2002 Olympics were agonizing, like miserable, all kinds of insomnia, and um, I mean, now you would say like mental health challenge, and you're right. Like
Mm.
that's what kids these days, right? Right.
Yeah.
That's what the common vernacular now is.
It's
But it's
anxiety.
pretty, yeah, anxiety. Thank you.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
super normal. You're 21 years old, you're getting ready for your first Olympics in your home country. 9/11 happened that year, right? So there's some existential, like, oh my gosh, are we ever safe again? There was a lot
Yeah.
going on,
Yeah.
and I was absolutely miserable. Like I was skating better than I ever skated, but I was so anxious. Like every day I was better than I'd ever been. And like the next day, I'm like, how am I going to be better than I've ever been again and again and
Hmm.
again? So it was really hard. And I won my first medal. I'd never won an international medal before. I never won Junior Worlds, World Championships, World Cup. Get to the Olympics, I win my first medal. And it's amazing for like a day. And I won a bronze. And of course, you know, bronze medals in the US, respected, but not the
Yeah.
same as winning a gold. Everyone cared for like a week. And I finished, I was like, oh, is that it? Like that's what I've been torturing myself over is like this.
Yeah.
Um, and so I made a decision, and I don't know if I could say in that moment, but like around that time where I was like, okay, I am only going to do this if I enjoy it, because this is not worth being miserable over. Like it's
Yeah.
hard. You don't make any money in speed skating. No one knows who you are. It's not worth it just for that one moment,
Yeah.
if that's all you want. And so I was like, I'm gonna do this because I love it. And two, I realized how many people did watch for that one moment. And I thought, okay, if I've got the world's attention, then I'm going to try and do something worthwhile. And I know how the media works because I've always liked watching what's happening around me. And I've always found it interesting that there's this machinery that tells stories and like how those narratives are shaped. And like, even as a young man, I think I had an intuitive sense of it. And so I go, I know if I have something that's differentiated enough and worth saying, that we'll be able to pull people along on this. That part I knew, and I didn't know much else. And so going into the '06 Olympics, I won the World Spread Championships, first man in the US since Eric Heiden and Dan Jansen. So like now I've like linked myself in some small historical way to like my heroes in the sport. And I have a great shot at winning. And so I was like, okay, if I win a gold medal in this games, I'm gonna donate this money. I donated money to Johan Koss, the guy who I first watched along with Dan Jansen in '94. I donated his charity that he started for refugee children. And I was like, this is all incredibly poetic. It all works. And hopefully people will see this and be moved and we can make some sort of impact. And it really blew up in an incredible way. And by
Yeah.
far, until I had my kid, like this was the most meaningful thing I've ever done in my entire life. Like nothing else even remotely compares. But I had that one day where skating was perfect. I skated out of my mind well, better than I ever dreamt. And we had the press conference and I made the announcement and people like jumped on board. We raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in a day from all the sponsors, and then people started donating. And the total amount across all things was well over $1.5 million in a couple of weeks or
Yeah.
two, which in those days was real money. You know, these days $1 million, but
It's a rounding error.
it happened better than I ever could have dreamt.
Very poetic, as you say. The organization Right to Play. Um, what exactly did that organization do with regards to with refugee children?
Yeah, so they were a sport and play program for refugee children. So Johan Koss started it. So this hero of mine, speed skater, essentially after he won, he basically donated his Norwegian bonus, but really he donated his goodwill to start this charity. There are tens of millions of displaced children across the world. And most people have no idea what a refugee camp is. You may have seen like when they were, you know, the old commercials, they'd show sort of children starving, right? So
Yeah.
those exist.
Sally Struthers.
Yeah, right there you go. I was like, I don't remember which celebrity was raising one of these things. But the reality is, there's also millions and millions of children and women who are living in these camps who've been driven out of other countries. They're not welcome in the host country, and they're sort of corralled,
Mm-hmm.
and they're kept alive barely. So they're fed maybe usually by UN or another group, and they're sheltered, but there's nothing going on in there. There's no school. There's nothing for people to do, and that's not living. And so Johan Koss started the organization because he said, look, they absolutely need food, shelter, and medicine, but they also need more, and children need a reason to be excited and to be happy and to live. And so they started off by providing sport equipment for kids in refugee camps who had nothing, like literally nothing. And then it evolved into using sport as a teaching modality to help educate kids who didn't have schools to help teach lessons about conflict resolutions. Incredibly, in these refugee camps, there were times in which tribal factions that had been at war in their country and they had been driven out would be like in the same camp. So gender equality, HIV education. There was all of these programs that sort of organically grew from the needs of these children in these camps. And sport is so wonderful to reach people because children just learn through play. We do it automatically. You just put kids in outside and they'll find things to play with.
Yeah.
But if you use that to educate, then it's super effective.
Yeah.
And that was what Right to Play did.
That's amazing. Tell me about Team Darfur.
Yeah. At some point in this journey, I was advocating for protection of civilians from Darfur. So I picked a very specific region. In the mid-2000s, there was an area in Sudan that the Sudanese government had basically empowered a group of militias to wipe out people and take whatever they wanted. And so millions of people were flooding out of Darfur, and millions had been killed, or at least hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people had been sort of slaughtered in their villages. And what I realized was being a humanitarian, which is what the Right to Play support was doing, was important. But what they also needed was to not be gunned down by helicopter gunships and warriors and warlords.
Hard to play sports when you're getting gunned down or you can't eat or stuff like that.
Yeah. And when I made that transition, it was a transition from sort of humanitarian work, which is very easy as an athlete because it's like feel goody and people aren't really going to question your bona fides and they're not going to really question. And then I transitioned to more of an activist where I'm advocating for change. Now, astonishingly, given the world we live in now, at this point, this was really a bipartisan supported issue in the US. Like really deeply religious Christian Republicans were supporting it, as well as very liberal, like Democratic lawmakers. And so I didn't face any kind of heat from the US, but I was saying, look, there needs to be intervention to protect civilians. And now all of a sudden you're like really treading on if not dangerous territory, like you're out of your speed skating wheelhouse now. And so it started getting heat for it. So you do the best you can.
It's so weird. Like, how is that politics? How is it politics not to want kids to get gunned down? It doesn't seem political.
Yeah.
It seems pretty non-political.
Right. Well, I mean, that's true to a point, right? Like, I think on its face, yes, not wanting kids to be gunned down is not political. But the reality is, if a government wants oil under their land and it's cheaper to wipe them out than it is to pay for them, there's a political decision there that's made, right?
Sure,
and people make that decision all the time and have since the dawn of history. Yeah. Team Darfur really sprung as an idea to help get athletes who wanted to be more active on that side of things involved in a way that wouldn't harm the work that Right to Play was doing, which is extremely necessary and generally apolitical. And so I said, look, I want to be more effective for these people. And I think this is the way to do it. We talk about how it rubs into politics, right? Like China was hosting the next Olympics. The 2008 Olympics were in Beijing. And they were hosting the games, and China was Sudan's #1 trading partner. So like now, the chessboard has been set, right? And now you can see pretty easily how if you are using the Olympic movement to talk about peace, right, which is ostensibly what the Olympic movement is about, suddenly you are treading into some areas that people are going to be really upset with you about. And that was the reason we even, started what became Team Darfur. I originally started as a different group. Two amazing water polo player guys from UCLA had started Team Darfur. And so we merged. Their name was infinitely better than ours, but we were doing the exact same thing. And so let's not reduplicate efforts.
Now you went to Khartoum and Darfur. You went down there, right, to check it out?
Not to Khartoum. Yeah, okay. I went to Chad. So I'm banned from Sudan. So I maybe could go back now, but I have not tried. But I was not allowed in, and it was certainly not safe for me to be there. So I never went to Khartoum or to Sudan, but I went to Chad and traveled along the border with a number of other folks. We went all over other African nations trying to drum up support from African Union nations that were already doing things to support. And so we sort of went and lobbied them and pushed for more Egypt, Ethiopia. But the closest I got was the Chadian border, which I think there was 600,000 or 700,000 Darfur refugees in camps along that border that we traveled.
did the Sudanese government, did they shake their fist at you? Like, what were they saying about you? Like, what were they getting annoyed at your? Uh,
Yeah, I mean, there was I don't remember exactly, but there was a lot of basically this guy's an idiot ice skater, like don't listen to him sort of a thing. But I don't remember much from the Sudanese government. There was obviously I got banned from China also, so I
yeah,
didn't get to go. I was going to go to the Beijing Olympics, and I ended up having my visa pulled the day before I was supposed to
yeah.
leave.
I was going to ask you about that too.
And what's interesting or challenging about that is like the US Olympic Committee, certainly the International Olympic Committee, like they're not going against the host country unless the host
Hmm.
country is doing something profoundly awful.
Yeah,
And they don't really want any heat. Like they want the IOC certainly wants the Olympics to be seen as this great force for good. And I believe good things happen from it. Like I think a realist about it. I think it's the world is much better having the Olympics and the Olympic movement. There are limits to what the Olympic movement does in the real world of sort of this realpolitik, you know,
hmm,
machinations of governments.
yeah,
And so the IOC very quickly sort of sided with China and was like, yeah, Joey Cheek doesn't speak for us, and he's a. I suddenly very quickly went from a gold medalist, sort of celebrated, look, this is the best of what the Olympic movement about, to he's a private citizen doing his own thing. So
yeah, yeah,
that one, in some ways, the IOC in particular, that one kind of stung even more than any of the criticism from a country that, like, obviously is incentivized to have me not talk. So
yeah,
um, that was tough. And again, though, I'll say, like, I felt very supported. I think I'm on the right side of history even now, and I felt very supported by a government that was our own, that was considerably less divided than it is
yeah,
now. And so I think in some ways it was like the last of a time in which all factions could agree and believe in
yeah.
something in some ways, or it was close to that. Like we were getting
Hmm.
close to that. So
Was was
makes it
USAI
easier.
was USAID working anything there?
Yeah. And in fact, man, I learned so much. This is wild. This is a walk down memory. I haven't thought about a lot of this stuff in a number of years. So forgive me if my memory is a little
No, I want
fuzzy.
to. Yeah, this is great stuff.
SAID was doing incredible work. So they were feeding, right? That's the governmental organization that's feeding these things. So when you hear the US is feeding people in other countries, there's a government agency that like boxes up American grown food, which was paid for, puts it on C-130s, flies it to distribution stations, gets it out there. And people live because of the work that USAID and like the generosity of the American people. When I made that announcement, very quickly, right? Like, I mean, you can kind of tell from this, this is pretty far afield from typical Olympic fare. And I was passionate about doing the best I could and the right thing, or what I believed was the right thing. And so I was getting interviewed all the time by a lot of media. Like it was, in retrospect now, it's wild how much media attention we were getting. And so multiple people in the State Department reached out. And I can't remember exactly how high I went up, but it was like, you know, it wasn't like the Secretary of State, but it was like Deputy Secretary of State
Yeah,
had me come to DC, go to State Department, and basically like sit me down and they're like, we're going to show you all of our stuff. Like we're going to show you satellite photos. We're going to talk to you about what's happening because you're already out there talking about this, and we want to make sure you at least mm, know what you're talking about or know our side. I mean, it depends on how you look
yeah,
at it. And so this is pretty heady stuff. Like I'm 27 years old. I hadn't started school yet. I'm just off the Olympics. I'd never done anything other than train and read about the world, right, through books. And now I'm getting kind of called into the State Department to come see satellite imagery of villages that had been burned and like troop movements, which we track all of it. And it's wild. And I start to grasp the enormity of like what our government does in the world. You're like, oh my goodness, I always knew that we, you know, were powerful in the world, and I had no idea. And so it kind of felt like Oz's curtain was getting pulled back, and now you're seeing how the world works in a way that
hmm,
you have only read about before now.
yeah. What did you
He's
learn
yeah.
from those like just the stuff they shared with you? The stuff like I don't know. I guess it probably wasn't. I don't know. That was declassified, or I don't know if you needed to do a
I
clearance.
assume it was. I didn't ever have to get clearance, so I assume it was, if not declassified, it was like reduced in classification or whatever had been cleared, right? Because I never had clearance. I think in these days with Google Earth, what everyone has maps, right? But
Yeah,
but
yeah,
Google Earth was sort of this the first sort of satellite imagery that the common person could see. And these days, I think we take for granted how much you can learn about the world, how much intel is out there.
Hmm.
But at that point, you didn't know this. No one knew any of this stuff. You kind of like trusted what was on the news, right? Like
Hmm.
CBS, NBC, ABC. This is the tail end of that sort of being the trusted
Yeah.
voice of what the world was. And the two things I was struck by were one, again, the enormity of the operations. Again, when you think of like the US budget, I don't know what it is, $1 trillion, no, more than that, right? Like
Yeah. To three,
how much money
four
we spend, 3 or 4
trillion.
trillion. Yeah. Military is another trillion or two if it's not on bucks. Right? So you realize like that's an unfathomable scale. And then you see all these departments, every country has a group of people like State Department, right, which are not operatives, and then CIA probably has stuff as well, and then the
Mm.
U.S. military, and just the enormity of this system that is operating around you.
Mm. And
So first of all,
NGOs as well, right? Going in there.
then the whole world of NGOs, which are sort of like can be subcontractors, they can be sort of operating on their own if they raise their own money.
Mm.
The whole world, how gargantuan it is, and
Yeah.
it's wild. And then the other piece of it is you always hear people say like, "Oh wow, that looks like a well-oiled machine," and then you realize like how much of it just is like bubble gum and like dental floss holding the thing together,
Yeah.
and realizing how much of the world turns on just dumb luck. And actually, it's a lot like the Olympics. You mentioned it once, and I wanted to like just bring it back to that for a second. My belief now, years later, I was a lot more deterministic or believe that there was a lot more determinism in like your ability to affect your outcomes at the Olympic stage. And as
Hmm.
I've gotten older, I've seen people who were too good that just one dumb bad thing happened and you go, that was not that was bad luck. And we don't like that as people because we like to think we have enough control. And if you just will it and want it and try hard enough, you can overcome bad luck. But sometimes it's just bad luck. And maybe that's maturity or getting older. But I've seen it at enough Olympics where I'm like, no, that person was the best and something bad happened that was
Yeah.
not their failing.
Yeah.
And it works at country and government scales as well. And when we were in Chad at one point, we're getting briefed there, and State Department was there, and some maybe UN people and some like Chadian governmental officials there, and there'd been a coup attempt, and the coup attempt was thwarted not because like soldiers had fought them off. They didn't have a map to the Parliament House or to the presidential palace, and they stopped someone in the street, their convoy of dudes in Toyotas with machine guns, and got directed to the Parliament House instead of the presidential palace. And there was more guards there.
Uh-huh.
And that was like the determining factor. And I was
Yeah.
in this meeting with people who were like very stone-faced, serious people, and I started laughing, probably a little hysterically, because like this cannot be how the world works. And I'm like, you guys are all
Well,
just like, this is just
go.
how it is. And like, yeah, that's
It
how it
happened.
goes.
It happened in 1914 with Archduke Franz Ferdinand. I think he got. They tried to shoot him and they missed, and they rushed him down the street, and he went down this one alley, and there happened to be another assassin there. And
And
they
that's what
finished.
starts World War I, right? Or
Yeah.
like finally kicks it off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and here we
Yeah.
are. Here we
Yeah.
are.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Those two realizations that our force is huger and more complex than I ever thought, and still how barely held together the machinery is, and
Yeah.
how a thing can happen that just blows everything up. It was
Well,
honestly unnerving. I have felt less certain and less comfortable in the world ever since knowing all this stuff.
a lot of people out there faking it, right, till they make it.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah,
and they're in government too. They're everywhere, and they got titles and.
yeah. I have
But
deep respect. Like, I hope this doesn't come across as anti-governmental. It's not.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think this is an almost impossible task. Like, I met really smart, really hardworking, really caring people that were doing the best they could in a very chaotic world. Like,
Yes.
that's just how it goes.
It's a probabilistic universe, and so you never know what's going to happen. What do you think would have been different had there been like this happened, or if you had won your gold in the full flowering of the social media era versus, you were back in the old internet, right? You were back in the the last, probably when the internet was last time it was really good. Uh,
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, everyone thinks it was better when they were a kid. I think this would have been my medium. I really do. Like, I think I missed. I was early on blogs and vlogs, and I really loved it. And I think I was a good blogger. I think had I been born at a time where I had this like the ability to distribute my own whatever,
Hmm.
I would have really enjoyed having that access. And you remember, like, MySpace had just started in 2006. I went to bed after my gold medal, and I woke up the next day and I had 30,000 MySpace followers. Which, again, in these days, like, that's nothing in terms of social media following. But at the time, like, that
Yeah.
was a incredible sort of
There was only
jump.
100,000 people on the platform at the time, so
Yeah, I think
they were all following you.
I wish that was the case. I think it was probably more than that, but yeah, it was just different orders of magnitude different. So
Yeah.
I would have really, I wish I'd had the opportunity. My wife says to me, "You sound like such a like old man when you say stuff like that. Like, oh, I would have been great at it. Like, let it go, let it go." But the ability to communicate directly with people, unfiltered, like it's both horrible and incredible. And I think that that's the way this is like it's both beautiful and horrible. Um, like if you use it for horrible things, you get horrible outputs, but you can use it for incredible things as well, and you can communicate stories about people that that otherwise you'd never hear. So that distribution is really king, and it's not as gate kept. It's still
Yeah.
gate kept, but it's not as gate kept in the past where it's like Tom Brokaw doesn't say it, it ain't getting
Right.
said.
Right.
So I don't know. I am torn. Like there's a lot that right now feels very scary and uncertain. And like for my kid, I'm like, ugh, I don't know if I want him growing up in this age where everything is visible online and everyone's like online all the time. But I think I would have liked the chance to have like been on the scene at a dawn where you could capture the people who actually wanted to hear what you had to say.
You could still do it. You could still go on there and do that stuff.
I also have like a pathological aversion to self promotion. Like even now, I know I'm here, I'm just blathering away, and you're like, I find that
No, this
impossible
is
to
great.
believe. Listen to you,
Yeah. Yeah.
but in the real world, like I also don't like, yeah, I don't know. There's like a shamelessness factor to social media
Mm,
that I still have the gene of like I would be ashamed to do some of the stuff that I see
yeah.
people doing in order to get. Although I did do a post from Milan that was absurd and did small numbers, like tiny numbers. So I guess I'm not totally shameless. Italian men wear the sweaters over their
Yeah. Yeah.
shoulders.
Oh, yeah.
And so we had this running joke with my producer for the whole broadcast about like I kept putting more sweaters over my shoulders in the middle of a show. And so I did a post outside the Olympic rings with like 15 sweaters wrapped around my neck, and I said it's called fashion, look it up or whatever, right? And like that one did okay. So I guess I'm not totally avoidant of doing cringy things
Yeah.
for clicks.
Ha. The there's some talk about there's the current crop of athletes, and we're in this social media age, an AI age, and it's a whole different set of pressures. You get, I'm sure, the level of vitriol that some people get from all corners,
Yeah.
and even people like there's are these even real? Are these real people who are doing these comments? Are they, who are these people
Yeah.
coming from? Um, and do you think it would be harder in a way? Like you talk about getting the message out would be easier, but do you think it would
Mm.
also be like more fraught with the kind of bone chilling type of direct
Yeah. Yeah.
access
Yeah.
to the messaging? Like back then on the blog, you could disable comments and stuff like that. But
That's
now,
true. That's true.
and yeah, now I mean you can still disable comments, but you're still going to kind of get people. You're going to see people devote whole pages to you now
Yeah.
of stuff. What do you think about that?
I think it goes back to that kind of beautiful and horrible at the same time. I'll say this. These young men and women are savvy. Like when I look at the ones who get it, the ones who are really putting out media that is of the of the modern vernacular, right? Like they speak the language of social media. They're incredibly savvy. I didn't even think of that. You're absolutely right. And this is sort of like, yeah, of course you don't have to think about it, but like there's enormous vitriol that is spewed at like female athletes. No question. I know that for a fact. Like
Mm,
I know a lot of women athletes, and I know the comments I get on my tiny little, like I'm no following. So it's not like I'm not famous, right? But I know how much I know the comments I get, and I see some of the comments they get. And I'm like, that is different. There's no way that is obviously and verifiably different. So I didn't even think of it that way. I think what I was when you first started this, what I was thinking was like the most distasteful of it is it feels very distracting from your actual performance.
mm-hmm.
And being good at social media and being good at your craft are totally unrelated. You might be good at both, but they're totally different skill sets. And there are people who are not in the Olympic caliber or in the Olympic world. They might be Olympians, so they're already pretty special, but they're not great on the Olympic stage, who come out of this almost like better known and more successful as entertainers or as social
Mm-hmm.
media
Mm-hmm.
influencers. And that doesn't quite sit right with me because I still think I'm a little bit purist about these sports. And
Yeah.
I think like, man, like you're there to perform. You're there to compete. And there's a lot of posts from a lot of people that are not gonna like go and compete and win medals who are like, oh, I'm so happy to be here. Here's my fits, here's my,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, let's not lose sight of the big goal. Oh, again, I don't want to just be like old man yelling at clouds, but there are, I think you said fraud. And if you didn't say fraud, like that's it. This is a whole new world of landmines. Generally speaking, though, I'm still impressed at how savvy these young men and
Yeah.
women are. Like the ability to
Yeah.
pull it off and thread that needle of saying something without,
Mm-hmm.
igniting the world. And it's changed. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that way. Like I think people have learned this.
Yeah.
It's society has evolved. People have
Mm-hmm.
gotten better at social media. When it first came out, people were just incinerating all over the place. So
The
I
lady
think
who
it's
tweeted something before she got on a
my
plane and then
gosh.
landed the next day.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I remember that. That was
Yeah.
yeah, that was awful. That was awful. She did an awful thing. Also, what the internet did to her was awful. It was
Right.
awful. Everyone
Yeah.
lost. It
Yeah.
was awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um, there is, I think, still this new mentality among athletes that there's more Joey Cheeks out there, and by that
Hey,
I mean
that's kind.
yeah, but there's not, but and I mean in a sense that like for a long time, I think in the '90s, there was this whole kind of thing where it's like you must be this obsessive, single-minded person on your sport, like you must be a maniac to win. But we're seeing now people in various sports who have other interests. Like Fernando Mendoza just won the Heisman, right? This is a kid he's making the most of his time as a college student. He's going doing internships, and he's into stoicism, and he's like not just doing it as a gimmick. He can talk about it. He can talk about various topics he has interest. And if if he didn't win the Heisman Trophy, or if he didn't win the national championship, people might say, well, if he hadn't focused on those things so much, or hadn't talked about those things so much,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
he
yeah.
would have won, right? And you're seeing, and I say this about you because you went off and you went to Princeton,
Yep.
and the funniest thing, I don't know, if, maybe I just think it's ironic. Maybe you planned it this way, but you get banned from the 2008 Olympics, and then you go study Chinese at
Yeah,
Princeton.
yeah,
So
yeah. I stumbled into that one.
Mandarin, yeah,
Yeah, I studied Mandarin. I spent
yeah.
4 years studying Mandarin. That is a very difficult language for a
Hmm.
non-native born speaker. Look, I kind of looked at the world. I think it's obvious I'm interested in sort of geopolitics as a thing, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
interested in the world we live in. Um, we are essentially in a dipole world. Essentially, maybe Europe is we're a tripole. If you've got Europe, U.S., and China, maybe I
Hmm.
don't know. I'm not smart enough to know, but like for sure, the U.S. and China are the major factors and the major forces. And I was like, all the Chinese people I know, I love, like the Chinese athletes that I met. I, I really like them. And I wanted to learn the language and culture and economics and history because I feel like they're going to matter and I should probably know something about them, good and bad, more than just superficial or what has been fed to me, you know, propagandized towards me.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm pretty obviously on record being like, they're doing bad stuff here. We
Yeah.
should push for that.
Yeah. But
And yeah, so I did. I studied Chinese and
but
then I
you can
got
go.
banned from the
Can you go
country.
read the Beijing Daily or
I
Shanghai?
could when I was in school, man. It slips fast. So there's no alphabet. The characters are singular. You don't spell things with them.
Hmm.
And man, if you're not reading every day, or at least for me, if I'm not reading every day, it goes really quick. So now I get it. I'm like, I wrote a paper my last year and I was like, I don't know half of these things that I wrote on here. Like, I think I wrote this. So it goes very quickly.
Hmm. Well, among the many things that you accomplished in and around your Olympic triumph, one of the things was the Heisman Trophy Trust said, "Hey, we're doing this new award. We'd like you to be the first recipient of it." What was that conversation like? How did they get a hold of you? Like, describe to me the whole process and what that was like.
So It's very cool, but I actually was shielded from a lot of mechanics. I had an agent at the time who was extraordinary, and so my agent found out about it.
Mm.
There was some very secretive things going on at the time, and that we were trying to sort of negotiate while it was all happening. So first of all, I was deeply honored, like enormously honored, and I think I have the honor and pleasure of being the least powerful, impactful, successful, and wealthy of all of the Heisman Humanitarian winners. So I'm honored to have been the start. I think it's only
Well,
gotten
I
better. I
mean,
think it's only gotten better.
impactful. I mean, I think, with all due respect, I've interviewed, I think the last 3 or 4, because we've only done the podcast the last 3 years. But I mean, not to downplay what anybody else is doing, but I think what you were doing is matters of life and death, and I think that's pretty commendable.
Thank you. Again, like I said, I'm proud of that work. But the cohort of men and women who've gone on to win this, I'm like, holy cow, I'm honored to be mentioned with these people. So that
Impressive.
part is really cool. Here's the crazy thing. It was all extremely hush hush, but I was getting ready to go. I was asked to go on a diplomatic mission with George Clooney, Don Cheadle, a woman named Tegla LaRoupe, who was the marathon world record holder, and a number of other like really important sort of state level people. We were flying to China, to Egypt, to Turkey to go essentially lobby those governments for more civilian protections. And it was happening at the same time. So I couldn't attend the ceremony. So we sent my mom. So Mama Cheek went to the Heisman ceremony and accepted the very first Heisman Humanitarian Award on my behalf because I was literally on a jet going to go meet the president of Egypt at the time or something like that.
Yeah.
And now I even say this, and it's so absurd when I think of how prosaic my life is now. And I'm like, when I finish here, I'm going to go back to my office because I've got to get a city report for a grant for my organization that I do. I've got to get that city report done because I couldn't get it done because I was going to the Olympics. And
Yeah.
then I'm going to, drive to go feed my kid dinner. Equally amazing. So relatively ordinary in the grand scheme of things. But once upon a time, yes, I had to profoundly apologize for not being there in person because I was going with movie stars to meet presidents to talk about humanitarian issues, which is I can't even believe those words are coming out of my mouth. It's so absurd.
What a life. What a life. That's pretty good. That's pretty good on the accomplishment scale. Was it 2 questions? Was it Mubarak and what's it like hanging with Clooney on a jet?
Oh my gosh.
In
It was Mubarak.
Mm.
And we actually ended up meeting with his son. Because like he was not long for being there, right? Like I don't think the Arab Spring. I'm really getting fuzzy. So
couple more years before the spring, Arab Spring,
Arab Spring
2 or 3 more
started,
years.
Yeah, I know if your listeners will be like they're going to jump. Like, hey. So Mubarak wasn't long for leading Egypt, but it was Mubarak. He was still president. We met with his son. Clooney is every character he plays on TV. Like some people I think are method actors, right? Like I guess Daniel Day-Lewis, he can become anyone, but no one knows what Daniel Day-Lewis is like. Like Clooney is the guy that you meet and you're like, gosh, I just wish I could be friends with him forever. He's so charismatic, genuinely kind to every interaction I ever saw him have, like fiendishly charismatic, but like roguish. I'm like, oh my gosh, you are you. And like, of course, he's a super attractive guy. So all of my girlfriends and the women in my life are like, oh, you hang with Clooney. And the wild thing about like, I found this super interesting. Like in terms of like attractiveness, there's just nothing wrong with his face, right? Like sometimes it's hard to explain beauty. And I looked at him and I was like,
he kind of glows, right? He glows, right? These guys, yeah.
And most people you look at him, you're like, yeah, something ain't right. I don't know what's not right with your face. Something not right with your face. Nothing like everything is so symmetrical and whatever. So he's phenomenal. He also has just an incredible heart. He was paying, I believe, I don't know if this is right. So, forgive me, viewers, and fact check me, but I believe he paid out of his own pocket for several satellites to be reorbited or redirected to do flybys over Darfur for more intel for humanitarian work. I believe that's true. Forgive me if it's apocryphal and I'm wrong, but
I'm going to go with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe that was true. And he was paying for that out of his own pocket because he believed in this. And he was he was the one who really raised the profile of the cause. Like I was an early voice that was contributing. A lot of really great voices were contributing to helping this groundswell of public awareness. But when George Clooney, especially at that time, steps up, like Now the whole world is talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
And my very brief experience in was phenomenal. I remember after that trip ended, we were landing in New York, so we were getting off the private jet, and I looked back and I was like, oh, "Shit, that's never going to happen again." Is it? Forgive me. Hope you can beat me out there, but I was like, "Oh man, that was a very cool moment. I don't know that I'm gonna get to do that again."
You didn't get his number. You didn't give you his cell number to hang out.
I think he actually did give me his cell phone number, but
he's like, "Don't ever
he changes it. He changes. No, he changes it like every couple. He has to change every couple weeks.
Sure. Yeah.
Wild thing about celebrity, and I know I actually have to run, I'm sure you do too, so I'll be very brief. Wild thing about celebrity, especially in our country, like you can't go anywhere. He cannot go anywhere.
Yeah.
And as soon as he does, someone will see him and they'll text somebody, and people, like, everywhere he goes, eventually a dangerous number of people will show up anywhere he goes. And that was scary. Yeah. And I realized then, I was like, "Ooh, I would not want to be like that. Is not a way I'd want to live my life."
Yeah, you're the proper amount of famous. So gold medal, had your 15 minutes for a while.
I want good restaurant reservations, but no one will come bug me at dinner.
Right. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I think Clooney went to France, I think. Anyway, gosh, Joey Cheek, thanks for taking the time to chop it up with me and to give our audience just this wealth of knowledge and wisdom about not only your sport, but everything that goes into the Olympics and of course your causes that you worked so hard on and that led you to be, among other things, honored by the Heisman Trophy Trust as a Heisman Humanitarian. Congratulations, 20th anniversary of your gold medal. And as the Heisman Humanitarian 20th anniversary. So
thank you. And thank you to the Heisman Trophy Trust. A lot of people, I know all of your listeners will know this, but a lot of people don't realize it's a humanitarian organization or a support organization wrapped in a very public award. And the work you do with high school athletes, the work that you've done for all the contributions you make to charities and sports and youth around the country are incredible. So I'm honored to be a part of it. Thank you. And I hope to be in New York. Maybe I can make it this year. I hope I can come up and celebrate with you guys.
That'd be great. Love to meet you. Oh, one more thing. You talked about geopolitics, and you are on the Greensboro, you're executive vice president of entrepreneurship at the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce. Or is this a precursor to? Are you going to dabble in electoral politics at some point? Is that something that you might?
I can't fathom it. My wife has told me on no uncertain terms I am not to run for office, but I do. I've moved back to my hometown, and I love helping build this community. So like I'm part of the community. I don't know about electoral politics, but I love helping out, and I love the work that I do now feels very important for a very small local group of people. So I still feel like I've got meaning in life.
We might need an ambassador to China one day in the future. So
that would be ironic. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
All right. Appreciate it. Take care.